Back when I was about 12 to 13, I became obsessed with a British television series about a time and space traveling alien in a blue box. But 104 episodes and 13 specials later, I started to lose interest and stopped the series completely. That was until, of course, just recently when I noticed that there were two, now three new specials available on Disney Plus, which undoubtedly piqued my interest and curiosity and sent me down the path to becoming re-obsessed. So without further ado, let's get into my review for...
I don't think that's a plane. It's a spaceship in trouble.
Oh my God, where are we?
I'm sorry, Donna. He's here. Driving you mad. Laughing at the human race.
Now, before I go any further, I do want to mention that there will be mild spoilers in this video for these three specials. So if you're someone that likes to go into a movie or show completely blind, this probably isn't the review for you. That being said, you can always check the specials out and come back. But now to get into the plot for these three specials, I'll try not to give away too much, but the biggest and most obvious thing to mention, David Tennant is back as the Doctor. When I first saw this, I thought it wouldn't be much, just seeing some side adventures with the 10th Doctor that will maybe set up the 14th. That was until I realized, no, David Tennant is the 14th Doctor. After Jodie Whittaker's time was up as Doctor number 13, many fans had expected Ncuti Gatwa to make his appearance. He had been announced as the next Doctor after all. But of course, David Tennant is the one that appeared, which probably confused and surprised many, given how confused and surprised the Doctor seemed in that moment as well. But that brings us to the specials, which has David Tennant's Doctor reuniting with my second favorite Doctor Who companion, Donna Noble, played once again by Catherine Tate. The Doctor, while trying to figure out why they're back in this familiar face, crosses paths with their old companion and sucks her back into the Time Lord lifestyle. Special number 1, titled The Star Beast, has the two meeting again, as well as seeing some familiar faces from Donna's family, and introduces us to Donna's daughter Rose, played by Yasmin Finney. The special is about an alien that crash lands on Earth and is being hunted and requires the help of the Doctor, Donna, and her family to be saved. Special number 2, titled Great Blue Yonder, follows the Doctor and Donna getting stranded on a seemingly abandoned spaceship after the TARDIS malfunctions. I don't want to give away much about this one, but the only other thing I'll say about special number 2 is that it kind of reminds me of the movie The Thing, which honestly might be saying too much, but that's where I'll leave it. But now for special number 3, titled The Giggle. This one once again follows the Doctor and Donna, who come face to face with a classic Doctor Who villain, the Toymaker, played here by Neil Patrick Harris. Whatever the Toymaker is up to, it seemingly makes everybody else in the world crazy, which in a way makes the villain of this episode the entire human race. That's all I'll really say about these specials. As far as plot goes, I already feel like I've given away too much, so now it's time to get into my review for these three specials. As far as the structure of my review goes, I'll be starting off with positives for the three specials as a whole, then I'll briefly list some positives for each individual special. Once I'm done with that, I'll repeat the process for the negatives. Then I'll end by ranking each individual episode from my least favorite to my favorite. So enough rambling and let's get into... Now, as far as positives go for the specials as a whole, I have to start with the performances from the cast, specifically with the two main leads, David Tennant and Catherine Tate. These two have amazing chemistry on screen and sunk right back into their characters. Getting to see more adventures with the two of them was an absolute treat and is what really makes these specials worth watching. But what also makes them worth watching is the writing. While the writing might not be the best on television or even the best of this series, it still brings the energy we come to expect and love from Doctor Who. The characters aren't written completely different to how they were before. The stories, while on a grander scale, still feel true to the Doctor Who name and legacy. Did it make me feel the way I did watching the series all those years ago? Not necessarily, but it came pretty damn close. Last positive I'll mention for the specials as a whole is the visual effects. Compared to the Doctor Who I used to watch, the visual effects in here were definitely a major improvement. I'm not sure if they've gotten better in recent years or not. I've missed out on the past 4 to 5, maybe even 6 seasons. Or maybe it's just the fact that the BBC has partnered with Disney for Doctor Who, giving them a bit bigger of a budget. But whatever the case is, they should absolutely keep doing what they're doing because the visual effects look great. Oh, and I gotta mention that new Doctor Who intro because it's honestly one of my favorites yet. The visual effects there look fantastic. I love the logo. I love the music. Everything about it makes me super giddy and makes me super excited to watch more Doctor Who. But now to briefly mention some positives for each individual special, starting with The Star Beast. This special might not be the best one this whole series has to offer, but what I can say is that it was still incredibly fun and even a bit emotional at times. I loved seeing David Tennant's Doctor reunite with Donna and her family, and I loved seeing how Donna's life has been since we saw her last. Overall, seeing these two again is what made me fall back in love with the series. Last positive I'll mention with this special is the action. I thought this one provided the best action sequences out of all three specials, and even some of the best action I've seen from the entire series. Especially when it came to that scene inside the house. If you've watched the special, you know what I'm talking about. That is quite honestly one of my favorite scenes in the entire special. But the next special on the list is Wild Blue Yonder. And as far as positives go, the first one I'd like to mention is the tone. This special definitely has an eerie tone and definitely gives off major horror movie vibes, which isn't abnormal for Doctor Who, but is done incredibly well here. I'm a sucker for suspense, and this one was probably the best one for that. But the second and final positive I have to mention for this one, the way it ends. Obviously, I'm not going to say how it ends here, but if you know, you know, and what an absolute treat that was. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But now for the final special, which is The Giggle. And as far as positives go, I think the story in this one was fantastic and also very clever. The thing I mentioned about the whole world going crazy, they do some really interesting things with that. Overall, in this one, there's a lot going on and lots of great ideas. Then there's Neil Patrick Harris's performance as the Toymaker, which was absolutely perfect. I love seeing him in the Doctor Who universe and hope to see him make his return. But the last positive for this one, similar to special number 2, I loved the way this one ended, for the most part. They do some very interesting and big things at the end of this episode, and it has me very excited to see what comes next. There's definitely a lot to love about these three specials. Doctor Who fans are eating pretty good this month. But that's not to say there aren't any issues, so let's get into... Gotta start with the specials as a whole. And the first negative I'd like to mention is the pacing for all three. Now, the first and third specials seem to rush pretty heavily, the third one far more than the first, which made me wonder why they didn't just extend the runtime a little bit, because both specials could have used it. But as for special 2, that one felt like it dragged, but still built some good suspense, but it still was a little bit slower of a special than I would have liked. The second and final negative I have for these specials as a whole are the villains. While I enjoyed all the villains from each individual special, I couldn't help but feel unintimidated by them as well. I never really felt the stakes with these villains, never really felt like the Doctor or Donna were in much danger of them, but at the end of the day, I still thought the villains were pretty fun. But now on to the negatives for each individual special, starting with the Star Beast. This is the one I have the least amount of issues with, just thought it rushed a little bit, and I thought the villains could have been a little bit more of a threat than how they turned out. So basically my only issues with this special are the issues I have with the specials as a whole. But on to the next special, Wild Blue Yonder, and this is the one I felt dragged the most out of the three. Pretty much the whole special takes place on a seemingly abandoned spaceship, which makes this one feel a little slow since the Doctor and Donna are bound to one place, having no one else to interact with. I do appreciate the horror vibe to this special, and it does get better once it gets going. But for the most part, and this might sound a little harsh, this special here felt like a bit of a waste of the reunion. But on to the final special, The Giggle, and my biggest issue with this one is definitely the pacing. This one moves way too quick and has way too short of a runtime for its own good. The story is jam-packed with just so much stuff, good stuff in my opinion. But I kind of wish this storyline would have been set up in the first special, having it be carried over throughout, rather than having it all be done in about 60 minutes. There was a lot of potential with this one, and I think they did a pretty solid job with the time they were given, but I can't help but think it could have been more. Now, I do want to mention the end of this third special, specifically how it made me feel. I don't want to give away what happens, but I will say I mostly love how this special ended. I would be lying if I said I wasn't just a little bit on the fence about it. If you've seen the special, you know what I'm referring to, and you may feel the same way. It's just a tad bit confusing, and also kind of feels like it came out of nowhere. But that's all for the positives and negatives for these three specials, both individually and as a whole. So now it's time to get into... Now, like I said before, I'll be ranking these three specials from my least favorite to my favorite, so let's not waste any more time and get into it. Starting at number 3, which is going to be my least favorite of the three specials, and that is Wild Blue Yonder. This special had its moments, but for the most part, it was just a little too slow moving for me. At number 2, the special I'm a little bit mixed on is special number 3, The Giggle. There's a lot I like about this special, but it's a bit unfocused at times, moves way too quick, and has an ending I'm still not completely sure about. But at number 1, my favorite of the three specials, and that is obviously going to be The Star Beast. I've rewatched this one a handful of times already. I love seeing the Doctor reuniting with Donna and her family. There's great action, a great story, and pretty much enough time to tell it all. But that's all for my ranking for these three specials. Feel free to leave yours down in the comments below. And that's all I have for this Doctor Who video. I'm very happy I finally get to talk about it on the channel. If you've seen the three specials, feel free to leave your spoiler-free thoughts down in the comment section below. Also leave your ranking of the three specials like I mentioned before. For those of you who haven't seen the specials, or even the series in general, let me know if you plan on watching anytime soon. And also let me know if you'd like to see me cover Doctor Who on the channel again. Thank you to everyone for watching and for any comments you might have for me. But do me a favor and leave a Dalek equivalent of a thumbs up, park the TARDIS on the subscribe button, and ring the bell to regenerate.